2023 was a strange year. We had people fully on their knees for a grown-up version of Annie. We had Chinese spies infiltrating NATO airspace. If only they knew they could make an app to gather everyone's data instead. Life would be so much easier for them. On top of all this, we had an annual edging session from Kanye West, who still hasn't dropped his new album yet. But with all of this stuff going on, this was the year that I listened to music the most, and maybe you did too. So today, I'll be naming my personal favourite albums that came out in 2023. But before we get into it, please do like and subscribe, as it does help me out massively. And quickly before we start, the albums are not being ranked, they're just being put together collectively to show my favourite albums of the year. But let's get into it. January 27th, Lil Yachty dropped an album, and personally, I've never really enjoyed Yachty's music that much, so I wasn't expecting too much from him. I gave it a listen, more than what I would have done in prior years, and it was actually pretty good. The change of style on Let's Start Here showed us Yachty can change styles and be versatile if needed to. I remember Running Out of Time and Drive Me Crazy were the main songs that stayed in my head at the start of the year. Definitely not the best album to ever come out, as it did receive quite a bit of criticism and mixed reviews, just like any album really, but to kick off the start of the year, it was a very solid album. As the months went on and became crazier, I sort of forgot about this project. I do like it, but it just doesn't remain in my mind like some of the other albums released this year. Overall, I like the sound of the album, and on first listen, it was very good. Yachty did do a good job and responded with also releasing some decent songs like Strike and Slide. February 24th, Don Toliver releases his album called Lovesick. The same scenario with Lil Yachty happened to Don Toliver for me. I never really enjoyed his music that much, but it was probably because I was scarred from Lemonade. That song just terrifies me now, thanks to TikTok. The good thing about listening to an album while having low expectations is when the album is actually good, you enjoy it a lot more. Lovesick was good, and it shows as some of the songs are still in my rotation to this day. With a stacked feature list and a new sound for Don Toliver, I was actually looking forward to the music releasing in 2023. With James Blake and Charlie Wilson creating masterpieces, to Future and Travis Scott adding their own twist, it was an all-rounded album and got me started with listening to more of Don Toliver's discography. The next album we have is from A$AP Rocky. If Only. But no, we have K-Tramini by Kaytranada and Amine. When this album dropped in May, it came with the vibes, and in the UK where I'm from, the weather was very good, which just matched the vibe of the album. I think most people would think Kaytranada and Amine wouldn't drop one of the best albums of the year, but they definitely did. Even with the songs conquered by TikTok like Forever or Rebuke, it's just a complete album. This is probably one of the more obscure and unknown albums in this video, so if you haven't already, I would suggest listening to this album. Who knows, it could be your new favourite album. Moving from the US to a place where people put meat sauce on their meat. We have arguably one of the best UK R&B singers of all time, Georgia Smith. She dropped her album Falling or Flying in September, and I don't actually know why I listened to this album to start off with, but all I know is I am glad that I did. Pretty much just a solo album with a couple of features. His album made me feel like a South London girl going through their feelings. Until J Hus came in.
Look at her. Look how gorgeous she is. Oh shit, look, the Georgia. Hey, J Hus. Ooh, ooh. Hey, baby.
I have always been someone who likes their fair share of singing and melodies, and this whole album genuinely covers them needs. Again, this album is still in my rotation, with What If My Heart Beats Faster and Too Many Times being the go-tos. And yeah, overall this is one of the best first listens to an album I've had, and I would highly recommend, for the songs of course. Back to the US, we have that random guy who got popular for being in Fortnite and playing with Ninja on stream. He's also one of the most photogenic people of all time as well. And of course, I am talking about Jax Webster II. People waited years for this man to drop another album, and when he did, people were in disbelief. Utopia could potentially be Rap Album of the Year at the Grammys, and in my opinion, it deserves it. Waking up at 7 AM to hear Hyena might have been one of the best feelings. The production is the best of the year by far. Come on, Kanye, Pharrell Williams, The Alchemist, Metro Boomin, Wonder Girl, and so many more great producers. Already, songs like Fiend have become classics, and the mix of aggressiveness and subtleness on this album really makes it great. Although, I will never forgive Travis Scott for not releasing the original Telekinesis or Future Sounds, but I'll still take the scissor vocals. Next, we have Homeless People pop music, and it is by an English artist called Jim Legacy, who definitely deserves more than 200,000 monthly listeners. This album has a very unique style for a UK rapper. It's just not what I expected from a UK artist, and that's what makes it so good and stand out. With some good melodies and unique vocals, this album is a very easy listen, and one that I will happily listen to if I'm doing something, like writing this script for example. On top of the great songs on this album like Candy Rain and I Tell, the album cover is genuinely one of the most chaotic yet amazing album covers I have ever seen in my life. If you want a break from your usual artists, then I would highly recommend Jim Legacy and this album. Now onto an album I would personally put into the top 3, and it is by someone who has actually been in the game for a very long time, and that is Black Milk. He released an album called Everybody Good in July, and it immediately became one of my go-to albums. The chill hip-hop jazzy vibe that this album has just really takes this album up levels. It can also be bouncy at times with songs like God Willing. It may not have the production an album like Utopia has, but it has soul, and that soul joins all of the tracks together to create this piece of art that I think may actually be my favourite album of the year. Black Milk and Everybody Good deserves a listen from you. Before we get into the last album of the year that I really enjoyed, it's time to give some honourable mentions. Metro Boomin deserves a mention with the Spider-Man soundtrack. His production never fails to disappoint, and the same goes with his feature selection, and with all of that together, a solid album is created. Kali Uchis with Red Moon and Venus is another album that I really enjoyed listening to this year. It deserves a space in this video just with vocals and songwriting alone. Danny Brown also deserves a mention with Scarring the Hose, as this album is full of versatility, amazing production, and just pure mayhem, which I really did enjoy. The last album we have on the list is a debut album, and it is by Hellraiser himself, Pinhead. I mean Tizo Touchdown. For a debut album, this hits the mark very well. It isn't as polished as it could be, but it is still an enjoyable and different kind of listen. He mixes the genres of rap and rock pretty well, and the outcome is an album that we haven't really seen before. With easy listening lyrics, it allows songs to be on repeat in your mind pretty easily. I always catch myself saying neighbour or Noonay, ain't none sweet but the Noonay, but yeah, How Do You Sleep at Night is another solid album that was released in 2023, and one I would recommend if you haven't listened to already. Anyway, if you disagree with any of these albums, you probably do, I would love to hear what your top albums of 2023 were down in the comments, and while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you are new, and yeah, stream one of these albums that I've suggested in this video. Go ahead.